All right. Time to bring in our buddy Landon Southwick. And now that I've finally sent him the link to come back into the studio, it's Friday. John's an idiot. There's Landon. So, Landon, Niko Moreno, Pulso Sports and Sounder at Heart, hanging out with us here as well. I wanted to talk about a couple of different things with you, but before you came in, Major League Soccer announced the starting 11 for the All-Star game, and there's a familiar dude that is on there for that one. Xavier Gozo gets the nod. Very, very cool for the youth movement going on out there at the Riot.
First off, thanks for having me on, guys. Niko, it's a pleasure to join you. Love the analysis you've got going on. U.S. has got some interesting scenarios. Let's just put that out there. They've got some challenges in front of them with the roster. And some might say that Xavier Gozo could have been a piece that maybe could have factored in as an X factor off the bench, maybe. We've seen it over the history a la Julian Green, like bringing a guy that maybe doesn't fit quite into the picture all the way, but giving them a nod and a chance. And, there's going to be questions on that, but he didn't get that. If you go listen to Pablo talk about that, him and Luna got the email that's all being talked about right after training. They were in training, headed to Minnesota, and they got that email. And I think there was the term I heard from Xavier Gozo is he said he was more disappointed than he thought he would be. I don't think he thought he was going to be in that group, but when it all was said and done, I mean, that's a disappointing moment. And for him, I think you'll see some of that fire. I think on the RSL side, I think the nice part is that means they keep Luna and Gozo through this year. So if you're going to talk about a positive out here that we're probably excited about from that standpoint, I think both those guys stay in RSL uniforms through this season. Winter transfer window, let's see what happens. Maybe the following summer transfer window. And I think Xavier Gozo would benefit from having some more time here. He's young. His girlfriend plays for BYU. He's, this is his life and this is where he's been. And I think that nod in the starting 11 for MLS is huge. I think he's a difference maker. He's a guy that we should keep an eye on. He's going to get some youth camps experience here coming up with US as well. A number of guys in the organization are, but he's a guy I wouldn't sleep on.
No, Niko, go for it. First question to you.
Yeah, look, first of all, if you were going to ask me whether a guy like Robinson should be in this, roster over Gozo, I mean, I would tell you, of course, take Gozo. I mean, it's just going to be a guy that's going to be a game changer any time you're chasing a game. Let's put him out there. You play with wingbacks. He could do that job. He's going to be attacking minded, so, I'm totally with you. I was so surprised as any that Gozo didn't get that call up. But I guess my question to you would be, what is currently the expectation for this team? Because RSL is in a very particular position where, look, I didn't think that we're going to be this good this season. And all it took was the first half of the season for me to realize that they are the real deal. I mean, offensively, at least, they are very good. Offensive movements. They got young talent. They got hungry players. And so how would you describe either the fans or your expectations of this team this season?
I mean, this is the second best start to the season that they've had, other than 2024, which is really interesting to look at. And when you talk about that movement from RSL, they've had moments where the academy has produced over the years. I mean, Taylor Booth and Zach Booth both came through the academy. Obviously, one's back with RSL. They went to Europe. There's been another, Sebastian Soto was one that went to Europe as well from that group. Justin Glad, Aaron Herrera, Brooks Lennon, all those guys featured in the U20 side that played in the U20 World Cup. And when you talk about Richie Ledesma, I'm not even giving the credit to another guy that has had a pretty good career on that side. So, I mean, you can continue to going. And I think we're starting to see that new movement come through RSL that kind of went through that phase. And I think what you're also seeing is there was an ownership change. And the Miller family who took over the club from this side, they were probably known to be fairly tightwads here in the state of Utah. Larry H. Miller kept the Jazz here. His wife now runs that. Well, is the owner of that. Her son runs it. Or excuse me, not her son. A guy a different guy runs that now. And in coordination with the Blitzer group, I think you're going to see this team continue to spend. I mean, no one's talking about it, but what are they going to do in the summer transfer window? Are they going to add more pieces to the puzzle? And I think we all look away because we're like, oh, are people going to leave? Yes, maybe people leave, but they have not been shy on spending this year. So I think what you see is the question will be, will RSL go all in? Could this be the year they go all in? Do they go get that one more difference maker that they need? And they've got guys that still haven't even blossomed all the way. Morgan Gila-Vogie, I think, is a guy that if I'm paying attention to that side, I'm looking at him and going, what else does he do? I think Luna's going to play with a chip on his shoulder. He already plays with a chip on his shoulder, but I think he's going to play with that added measure there. And then you look at like Gozo. Is this all he brings to the table? Or does now he sniff Europe and be like, I'm 3 ticks away from having a $30 million transfer coming up. I mean, the reports are $20 million right now. Does that go up? Does he, the form he's in right now, can he take it to that next level? And you would hope a young guy like that would take it not necessarily as a snub, but as an opportunity to say, I just wasn't good enough. How can I take it to that next level? Luna, I think you could say, you could feel that chip on your shoulder saying you got snubbed. So, different players take different things different ways. And I think both those guys are going to take it in stride. And I think this RSL side is going to continue to go as they go. And I'd be shocked if you don't see them continue to play well. The challenge in MLS, you can't peak too early. We've seen this RSL side, the only title they have, weirdly enough, came through the Eastern Conference. They played in the Eastern Conference finals, which don't ask me how that worked then. But yeah, the rules of MLS have obviously gone back and forth, and they were the final seed to get in. And I mean, they peaked at the right time. And so my worry is always, did you get hot too early? And can you figure out how to stay hot through the end of the season? And without the traditional table like we see in Europe, it matters being hot at the end. It does not matter to have a gazillion points a la Barcelona or something like that. It doesn't work that way. So
nope. Luna, Hezerkani, and Gozo, 3 names. And it's interesting how RSL builds. RSL is one of those teams that builds through Monarchs and goes through the academy, and everything goes through Harriman. Then you end up with what you get from there playing on the first team. And then now you're not afraid to spend. And so that's, I think, the mix that you're looking for these days to be successful, where, you've got to be comfortable in your own skin. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, that some teams are going to test limits. They're going to want to sit there and just go like this and write checks and just kind of sit there and go, yeah, we'll get you, and you. RSL is one of those mixes where they started building through the academy. Now with an ownership change, it looks like you're going to spend and add to that with that experience and those pieces that you've been able to build through the academy. So it's the mix, I think, is starting to work now at RSL end.
Yeah, and I think that the maybe hybrid approach that they're taking that'll be interesting to a lot of people is I actually think they'll sell off some of the young talent. And that's going to be a weird thing. I mean, we were looking and facing that prospect a couple weeks ago. I mean, Gozo and Luna go to the World Cup. Do they come back from the World Cup? Maybe not. And here's the thing that's fascinating for this ownership group. I think they see it as a business, which fair. Develop good talent, give them good resources. Harriman's a beautiful facility. It's got all the stuff that's needed for people to experience the world football game. I mean, it's the reason South Korea was training there. They spent their time in the locker rooms and the weight rooms and the recovery rooms there, using all those resources to get ready for their first game in Guadalajara in 7 days. And, when I sit and think about what RSL wants to do, that's part of it. They're going to sell off young talent, and it's going to hurt. But they're going to take that $20 million transfer fee and reinvest some of that. And that's where that becomes interesting. You're not seeing that with all these clubs. Some of these owners are lining their pockets with those transfer fees and not putting it all back in. I think this side will put the majority of that back in.
No doubt.
But is that a disservice, though, to what ultimately the fan base wants, which is a MLS title? Because look, there are situations, and there's a tons of them where you sell a guy and then you cannot replace him, right? I mean, Andres Gomez, we go back to that one. That one didn't turn out very well, right? You've seen it with Ajiman. You've seen it with all these players where you have this collective group that's playing great, and all of a sudden you take two pieces out, and the whole thing just runs out of gas. So that's where, to me, and I know it's difficult because you don't want to have an upset, frustrated player in your team because he didn't get his European dream, come true. My friend John has saw the Almada, saga go sideways, right?
Oh, yeah.
So those are the things where, it's a balance. But to me, RSL has a real opportunity, and I really do mean this, to be a true contender this year in the West, but you need to keep your players in order to do that.
Yeah, and I think they'll find the balance. And to answer your question, Niko, it is a disservice. I mean, as a fan, I was 15 years old when RSL started here in the state, and I remember that announcement like it was today. I remember reading the paper that next day, just with a sense of joy that this club was going to be in my home state. I was going to get a chance to see some of these guys. As I went up into college, I got to train with some of the guys. And, it was always interesting because the academy kind of started when I was in high school, and they were plucking these kids out of clubs around me. And you were seeing kids go to the Sum Cup. There was an age group right below me that won a Sum Cup in Spain and did all these cool things. And we always dreamed that we could grow that talent, but we'd be kidding ourselves if we didn't say you have to also add from without or outside. And part of that is soccer for a long time wasn't always profitable here in the States. And if you look at Dave Checketts, who brought RSL here, he'd tell you it was a non-profitable moment. Deloy Hansen, on the other side, lined his pockets with hundreds of millions of dollars because of that. And so I think what you've seen is now we've taken that plateau. I think ownership group now is at a point where they have money to spend. So they're not worried about every time recouping when they spend. But I also think, the question is, does Gozo want to go to Europe? And at some point you've got to say, we're here to help you realize that dream. We're not all the end all be all. And we know that. Will the MLS at some point be that? I believe with the way we spend in this country, I believe we'll rival some of those. The history may never be there, but there's going to be players that'll be just as expensive here as they are in Europe. And I think some of the dreams will be to play here and play against the likes of these players that are coming to the MLS. Watching the players play against Messi was a fun experience. Me and one of the other broadcasters were joking that I'd be nervous to go in a challenge on him, but looking over at him and seeing him and being like, that's a star. I saw Son this whole week and watching him and the way he acted in Utah was incredible. And I can't imagine looking over and being like, I get to play against that guy on a weekly basis. So maybe that dream flips, but I believe there's a fine balance. You may sell one, but not the other. And this year, RSL, I think, is going to not have to face that question like they would have if they both got named to the World Cup roster. And I think it's almost a non-point to me this year. Will that come up next year? I would not doubt that it comes up next year. And at that point, can you use your scouting abilities to find the right talent to replace them? And I think oftentimes with a lot of clubs, we see that they don't want to spend the money because they sold the guy for $5 and have to pay $8 to get a guy. I think that's a difference. I think that club's willing to, and with the connections that the Blitzer group has over in Europe, Crystal Palace, Portugal, some of these teams that group owns, I think there's some opportunities to bring some guys that you may not know that will flourish here. And RSL's proven that they can develop talent here.
Yeah. And thank you for the transition, by the way. I do want to ask before you get your weekend started. I wanted to ask about the experience of having Korea Republic at BYU, and that you and Dave got to, because I did catch the El Salvador match. We did run highlights, and so it was a no-brainer to catch the match. What was it like to have Korea Republic at BYU as they got to kind of get their sea legs about them, getting ready for the trip to Mexico? What was that whole vibe like?
First off, it was a dream come true. I wondered how I would get involved in this World Cup, and I thought I'd be paying $1,500 to see a game in person. Thankfully, did not have to. And, the cool part for this this situation is they ended up in Provo, which is really unique. And a lot of people ask the question, why Provo? And we explained on air a couple times, it all had to do with altitude. Korea was looking for that altitude advantage, going to play in Guadalajara, just over 5,000 feet, I believe, 44-ish 100 feet here in Utah. So 600 to 900 feet of elevation difference is what it was between Utah and Guadalajara, and they were trying to get ready, which was very interesting because Czechia was in Dallas, almost at sea level. So there's some scenarios there that are interesting, but seeing South Korea prep for a World Cup was incredible. I hope everybody gets a chance to at least watch some of these games. Korea is got a lot of challenges in front of them. They're playing a 3-back, and there's a lot of people that in Korea are not happy with their head coach. And he's a legend from the 2002 World Cup where they went to the semifinals. And so it's pretty interesting. We got involved with some of the Korea media, and man, they are filleting that team from the 3-back. They looked pretty good. There was a kid that diced them up from El Salvador on the far side of the pitch, right in front of us, in front of our broadcast standpoint, and he got him behind the back line 4 or 5 times. And so I fear that Korea might have some defensive issues, but they're fun to watch. They've got some young talent that is up and coming. They've got guys playing all over the world, from Bayern Munich to LAFC. You know, you're getting these guys, and it was a cool experience. Fans were just going nuts. I walked into the stadium on Wednesday night last week, and I got handed a Korea flag. There was like Korean women out there handing out flags, and it was incredible. And they couldn't have been kinder as a delegation. I think they gained a lot of fans in Utah from the way they acted and interacted. And I think that the exciting thing is it got us all feeling like the World Cup was here. And, you know, to look up and see that the World Cup's a week away, I think everybody's like itching for that. And, you know, I hope you guys get to enjoy watching some games. I'm sure there's many that you guys already have circled. And I think all of us are starting to circle games going, yep, I'm going to skip work for that one, or I'm going to tune out everything else that night. So
I'm kind of feeling a little, boss. Yeah, it's not going to happen. Landon, as always, my friend, it's great to see you. Next time that you are in Rio Tinto, don't forget to introduce yourself to our man, Jarrett Smith, who is now out there, and you can't miss him. He's like 6'9". He's wearing the SDH gear, and obviously he's a part of La Familia here. He's now out there with his base of operations. So say hi to introduce yourself to Jarrett, and don't be a stranger, my friend. Great to see you. Hit the promo for me before you get out of here.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys. You guys are awesome. Thanks for, you can catch me on Twitter, X, or whatever we call it nowadays. I'm glad to answer any questions, glad to talk RSL, and I'm glad to have you guys to join you guys. Jon, Niko, thank you. Good luck in your endeavors in the next month and a half. It's gonna be a go for the next month and a half. And hopefully we'll get to talk a little bit during that and see how things are happening and shaking out for the US. Hopefully some US advancing. That's what I want to see. So
yep, doors always open, my friend, and we will catch up with you soon. Now that you've kind of taunted me with this, the door is open, and we're going to be knocking on your door.
I'm in. Come calling.